The wind howled like a living thing across the frozen fields of Montana, carrying with it a fury of snow that swallowed everything in its path. The highway stretched out endlessly, a ribbon of white under the blinding storm. Most people were home, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by family and laughter. But not Ethan Cole. Ethan was behind the wheel of his black SUV, the only vehicle brave enough to face the storm that night. His dashboard clock blinked 11:46 p.m., Christmas Eve. The soft hum of classical music filled the silence, but it did little to ease the ache in his chest. He was one of the richest men in America, a billionaire known for his empire of hotels, private jets, and ocean view estates. Yet, at that moment, he had never felt more alone. Every Christmas was the same, another charity event, another glass of champagne, another hollow toast. This year, he'd decided to skip it all. Just drive. No destination. No noise. Just miles of empty road to outrun the ghosts of everything money couldn't buy. Outside, snow fell thicker, heavier. Visibility was fading fast. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing against the glare of his headlights bouncing off the swirling snow. Then, he saw it. At first, it looked like shadows, moving. But as he got closer, his heart kicked in his chest. There, right on the shoulder of the road, were four small figures huddled together, barely moving. He slammed the brakes, tires skidding, heart pounding. He jumped out into the storm, the cold biting instantly through his coat. The wind was merciless, slicing against his face. He could barely hear his own voice as he shouted, "Hey! Hey, are you okay?" No response. Just the soft sobs of children. Four of them, two girls, two boys, bundled in torn jackets and soaked sneakers. Their lips were blue, their little hands trembling. Ethan knelt beside them, his breath fogging in the freezing air. "Where are your parents?" he asked. The smallest girl looked up, tears frozen on her cheeks. They went to get help," she whispered. "But they didn't come back." Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't know who they were, or where they came from, but he knew one thing for sure, he couldn't leave them there. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the man who thought he'd seen everything, felt something real. Something human. Ethan didn't hesitate. The blizzard was growing worse by the second, snow whipping around like shards of glass. He pulled off his thick wool coat and wrapped it around the smallest boy, who couldn't have been more than 5. The child's lips quivered as Ethan lifted him into his arms, feeling how dangerously cold his skin was. "Come on, kids. We need to get you somewhere warm, now," Ethan said, his voice steady but urgent. The older girl, maybe around 12, nodded bravely, trying to help the younger ones stand. Ethan guided them through the storm toward his SUV, shielding them from the wind with his body. When they reached the car, he quickly opened the doors, helping them climb inside. The interior light flickered, revealing their pale faces and tear-streaked cheeks. Ethan cranked the heat up to full blast, his gloved hands shaking slightly as he turned around to check on them. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "I'm Lily," said the oldest girl, her voice trembling. "This is Max, Sarah, and little Noah." Ethan nodded, his heart tightening. "Lily, where were you going out here?" She hesitated. "We were driving to Grandma's for Christmas. Our car, it slid off the road. Dad said he'd walk to find help, and Mom went after him when he didn't come back." Ethan's chest ached. He glanced out at the blizzard, the road was completely hidden under the snow now. He knew if he didn't act fast, those kids might not survive the night. "You're safe now," he said, starting the engine. "We'll get you warm first, then I'll find your parents. I promise." As the SUV moved forward, the world outside became a blur of white. The storm roared, battering against the windows. Inside, Ethan could hear the faint sound of children's breathing, quick, fragile, and scared. He adjusted the heater vents toward them, silently praying that his mansion wasn't too far. When they finally turned onto the long driveway, the iron gates swung open automatically. The mansion stood ahead, tall, dark, and empty. For years, it had been a symbol of his success. Tonight, it would become a shelter. Ethan parked and turned to the kids. "Let's get you inside," he said softly. "You're home for now." As he stepped out into the storm again to carry little Noah, something inside him shifted, a quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, this night wasn't a coincidence at all. The heavy wooden doors of the mansion swung open, and a rush of warm air spilled out, melting the frost from Ethan's face. The kids stepped inside slowly, their eyes wide with disbelief. The grand foyer glittered with crystal lights and marble floors, but what caught their attention wasn't the luxury. It was the giant Christmas tree standing tall in the center, untouched, its ornaments still shining under the soft golden glow. Ethan hurried them toward the fireplace, tossing more logs onto the flames until the room glowed with comforting light. He fetched thick blankets from the couch and wrapped each child carefully, making sure their shivering stopped. Then he disappeared into the kitchen for a moment and returned with steaming mugs of cocoa, real cocoa, the rich kind he hadn't made in years. The youngest boy, Noah, clutched the cup with both hands, sipping slowly. His eyes brightened as warmth spread through him. "It's really good," he murmured. Ethan smiled, a small, genuine smile that surprised even him. "Glad you like it, buddy." For a long while, there was only the sound of the crackling fire and the quiet slurping of cocoa. The storm outside raged on, but inside, the world seemed to pause. Ethan watched the kids thaw back to life, their cheeks flushing pink again. Something in the way they sat close together, protecting each other, comforting one another, stirred something deep in his chest. Then, suddenly, Lily looked up. Her gaze fixed on a framed photo hanging over the mantel, a charity event picture from years ago. Ethan followed her eyes and froze. That's my dad," she whispered. Ethan blinked, confused. "Your dad?" She nodded, pointing to a smiling man in the photo, standing right next to Ethan, shaking his hand. "He used to work for you. At Cole Enterprises. Before he lost his job." Ethan felt his heart drop. The memory hit like a wave. He remembered that man, hard-working, kind, always greeting everyone with a smile. He had been one of the employees let go when the company downsized. Ethan had signed those papers himself. The billionaire stared into the fire, his reflection dancing in the flames. The warmth he'd been trying to create for those kids now burned in his chest, a mix of guilt, realization, and something he hadn't felt in years. Remorse. Ethan stood frozen by the fire, the photo still hanging above the mantel like a mirror of his past mistakes. He could hear Lily's words echoing in his mind, "He used to work for you." His throat tightened. Of all the families he could have found on that dark snowy road, it had to be this one. He stared into the flickering flames, memories flooding back, the day he signed the layoff papers, convincing himself it was just business. He hadn't thought about the faces behind those decisions. Not until now. And suddenly, those faces had names, voices, and children, 4 innocent kids sitting by his fire, sipping cocoa, their parents lost in a blizzard. Just as guilt began to crush him, a sound broke through the storm, a knock on the door. It was faint at first, then louder, desperate. Ethan's head snapped up. He hurried across the foyer, yanked the door open, and his breath caught. There, covered in snow and shaking from the cold, stood a man and a woman, their clothes torn, faces pale, but their eyes wide with hope. The woman stumbled forward, gasping, "Our kids. Please, are they here?" Before Ethan could answer, Lily cried out, "Mom! Dad!" and ran toward them. The other kids followed, tears streaming down their cheeks as they threw themselves into their parents' arms. The reunion was raw and beautiful, laughter and sobs blending together like a song. The man looked up, and his eyes met Ethan's. Recognition flickered. "Mr. Cole," he said, his voice weak but steady. You saved them." Ethan swallowed hard, his emotions tangled. "I just found them on the road," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I should have done more for you, back then." Daniel blinked in surprise. "You don't owe me an apology, sir. People lose jobs, but we never lost faith. My wife and I always told the kids, kindness comes back when you least expect it." Ethan felt his chest tighten again, this time not from guilt, but from something purer, admiration. In that single moment, everything he'd believed about success, money, and happiness shattered. He realized that the man he thought he'd failed had taught him a greater lesson, one that no fortune could buy. Real wealth is measured in compassion, not currency. The storm finally began to fade by morning. The first pale light of dawn spilled through the mansion windows, glinting off the snow like diamonds scattered across the ground. Inside, the once silent home was alive with warmth and laughter. The kids sat around the kitchen table, wrapped in soft robes Ethan had found in the guest rooms, eating pancakes piled high with syrup. Their parents, Daniel and Grace, smiled through tears of relief, holding hands as if afraid to let go. Ethan stood by the counter, a mug of coffee in his hands, watching them. For years, that kitchen had been spotless, untouched, cold, a symbol of his emptiness. Now, it was messy, plates everywhere, cocoa stains on the counter, crumbs on the floor, and it was perfect. It felt alive. When Daniel looked up and caught Ethan's gaze, he stood, walking over with quiet gratitude in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly. "You didn't just save our kids, you saved us." Ethan shook his head. "No," he said, his voice thick. "You're the ones who saved me." Daniel frowned slightly, and Ethan continued, his words coming slowly but from the heart. "All these years, I thought success was about building more money, more houses, more everything. But none of it mattered when I had no one to share it with. Seeing your family together last night, it reminded me what real wealth looks like." Grace smiled through tears. "Then this was meant to happen," she said. And somehow, Ethan believed her. Before they left, Ethan handed Daniel a folder. Inside were papers offering Daniel a position at one of his new community centers, along with full financial support to help the family rebuild their lives. Daniel's hands trembled as he looked up. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Because it's time I started investing in people again." Months later, Ethan's mansion became a refuge every Christmas, not for the rich, but for families in need. Children's laughter replaced the silence, and for the first time, his home truly felt like one.